Here's what we got on the rundown. Toyota's new luxury model SUV taken on a test drive, and the testers didn't like where they wound up. Now, they're telling you actually not to buy this. How big a deal is it? I'm going to talk to a top tester at Consumer Reports and a mechanic. But first, don't buy safety risk. Those strong and rare words from Consumer Reports magazine, very trusted source, feeding a public relations nightmare for Toyota. The car maker's new luxury SUV, the 2010 Lexus GX 460, is coming under fire from Consumer Reports, which says it may be prone to rollovers in emergency handling situations. We'll get into what that means in a bit. Testers for the magazine say they discovered the problem during their routine tests of the SUVs. That one right there. The don't buy designation is rarely given by Consumer Reports. In fact, the last time was in 2001 on a Mitsubishi Montero Limited. Talking more about this with David Champion from Consumer Reports and Lauren Fix, who is an automobile analyst and a mechanic. First, David, let's start with the actual testing. What you tested for, how specific you were, and how specific the problem is.
Well, what we do with every single car that we test at Consumer Reports is we put it through a whole battery of tests. There's over 50 different tests and evaluations. One of those tests is what we call emergency handling. We do a double lane change maneuver just to see how well it could avoid a child running out into the road. And then we also do what we call a track handling course, where we go into a decreasing radius bend and then lift off the throttle just to see what happens. And we want a car to be benign. We want a car to do what the driver thinks it should do. And with the GX 460, what we found was as soon as you drop the throttle, the tail would come way, way out before the electronic stability control would apply the brakes and rein the car back in.
Was that I mean, that's a big problem, but was that the only problem you found with this vehicle?
Yes, apart from that, it was a very nice, big, luxury SUV.
And I'm assuming you talked to Toyota. I mean, Lexus about this, and
yes,
they said, thanks for the information, right?
Basically, yes. They test a car thoroughly through all the different tests, but maybe this one they didn't quite get to the point that we did, and we don't think it's a good vehicle for people to be driving on the road. Let
me read Toyota's statement before we get any farther, Lauren, because I want to ask you about Toyota's nightmare here. This is what Lexus had to say. Our engineers conduct similar tests. We feel these procedures provide a good indication of how our vehicles will perform in the real world. We will try to duplicate the Consumer Reports test to determine if appropriate steps need to be taken. This is not a very complex test to duplicate, Lauren. I mean, I'm assuming that Toyota Lexus has already done this test.
Well, you'd like to think so, and Consumer Reports is an extremely reliable source. Many consumers rely on them, and I know, David, and I know that they're very reliable in what they do and how they test. However, the average consumer would run into that situation on an on-ramp or an off-ramp, depending upon which one they're on. And if they do run into this situation, when's the last time that they were trained on how to handle that? I mean, we, as drivers and people that test drive cars, we know what to do when cars get out of hand, but the average consumer has no clue, and that's when the trouble starts to occur. If this happens to a consumer, they don't need another nightmare, even though it's a beautiful luxury car.
Lauren, it shouldn't happen, though, right? The electronic stability control system should take care of this, and has taken care of this in past models of this vehicle. So what's the problem for Toyota, Lexus, and what's the fix?
Well, the first thing is they need to be testing these vehicles for every everyday possibility that consumers would run into before letting that car released to the consumer. Now, Consumer Reports will do everything that the average consumer will drive, and when they have problems on their test track, they report them, and they have no pressures either way from any manufacturer, so they have no reason but to tell the truth. So for you as a consumer, you need to test drive these cars in your everyday world, and if you're having these problems, Lexus needs to repair them. If that means repairing the stability control, repairing how the computer works in conjunction with the braking system or the throttle, that needs to be handled prior to it being released to consumers. It is a great vehicle, except for this one very serious problem.
It's a big black eye on a company already in trouble. David, there's only 5,000 of these cars out there. It's a new model. Is this easily remedied by Toyota if they act quickly?
I think it would be relatively easy to fix. You know, there's so many different algorithms that they use in the electronic control module to control the ESC system. So really, in some ways, all they really need to do is reprogram the ESC to prevent this happening. And it's strange that in the past, most Toyota vehicles and Lexus vehicles have a very aggressive electronic stability control system that doesn't allow the vehicle to move out of its normal track in any way, and this vehicle just allows it to go far too far.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. Lauren, David, thank you very much. If there's any out of this, it is just 5,000 of these are on the road for Toyota, Lexus. They cost about 50 grand or more, so we're not talking about a big market share for this company that's already reeling with other problems.